I'm Elex Michaelson. This week, the issue is Signalgate, fallout from the Trump administration's group chat about attack plans. Then the issue is Democratic town halls in Republican congressional districts. Is this an effective strategy? The issue is Governor Newsom's podcast featuring a liberal criticism of liberal policies in California. The issue is Governor Kamala Harris, her potential rivals in the race, pushing for a decision. Are you in or are you out? With us to break it all down and more is our panel, Politico's Melanie Mason and political strategist Mike Murphy.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
We've got quite the panel this week to help us make sense of an onslaught of news. It's hard to keep up. Welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson. Thanks so much for being with us. Melanie Mason is one of the most influential and respected political reporters in California. She is Politico's senior political reporter, leading coverage of LA politics and many statewide issues. Mike Murphy is a veteran political strategist who has worked on presidential and gubernatorial races. He's co-host of the Hacks on Tap podcast with David Axelrod and John Heilman, one of my favorite podcasts. Welcome back to you both. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So last week, we had Julia Louis-Dreyfus on The Issue Is. And the big story in the country this week felt like something out of Veep. We're talking about the Signal controversy. We'll show you some video. Congress now investigating a text messaging group on the encrypted app Signal, which included top national security officials, attack plans for Yemen, and an accidental invite for the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. White House says no big deal.
We have taken every question under the sun about this story, and the National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this mistake.
Some Democrats are calling for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to resign for putting out these plans on an app which many national security experts say could have been hacked by a foreign nation. Mike, your thoughts?
In the old Republican days, we would make a lot of noise about things 1/10 as big as this, where like a bunch of giggling frat bros are all on the text. Hey, we're going to use the new missile 28. So on one hand, it's hilarious, clown car, new era we're in, craziness. On the other hand, this is putting American military people at risk. There's a thing called a SCIF, which is basically a room that can't be bugged. And that's where most classic security conversations will happen, classified. And these guys are tweeting like talking about the Taylor concert. So, you know, I'm almost, and I'm not normally speechless. This thing is such an insult to the military, such a lack of respect. And I think the headline to it is, the way they've reacted to it is the other half of the story. There is no shame. Nobody resigns. Nobody takes responsibility. It's just this locust think of me, us, we're great, own the left.
But Melanie, it seems like President Trump doesn't want anybody to resign or be fired because that would be a win for the media.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, this is a, make no apologies administration. That was one of the things I think that they learned from their first term when Mike Flynn had to resign. I think that President Trump
who was the national security advisor then, Mike Waltz, national security advisor now. Exactly. Mike Flynn had to resign very early on in the administration.
And I think that Trump took, the lesson he took away from that was, you know, never surrender again. The very fact that we heard this administration using the word mistake, I can't think of the last time that I've heard a Trump affiliated person using that word, which just goes to show they know that this was a massive, massive screw up.
But the question, Mike, do average people care? Because I don't know how many people are using Signal to begin with. A lot of these national security issues seem foreign compared to like an issue like tariffs on cars,
right,
which
exactly.
is a big issue that people can really understand.
The things that'll really potentially hurt President Trump politically are if he doesn't keep the promise he was elected on, which is make the economy work. And when you put 25% tariff on imported cars, go ask a Honda dealer how they feel about that, even though Honda makes about 80% of their cars here already. But the North American auto economy is heavily integrated. You know, tariffs are economic poison. Bad economies wipe out political parties.
Still, the Democratic poll numbers are even worse. I mean, they're in the tank right now. And a lot of people have given President Trump credit for doing a lot of what he promised and looking like a strong leader right now, where the Democrats look like they're in the wilderness. There's been this effort to do town halls in Republican districts. We saw Jimmy Gomez was out in Bakersfield doing that. He's a Democrat. He challenging the district where David Valadao is. He's considered one of the most vulnerable Republicans. Ro Khanna also a Democratic congressman, went to that same district in Bakersfield, did a few others in Southern California. Melanie, you were there talking to voters. What did voters tell you?
Well, first of all, I think that they feel a little bit neglected and just sort of at a loss of like, who do they go to? So congratulations. If you live in Bakersfield, you are going to be getting so much attention now from Democrats because this is the district, David Valadao's district is the district with the highest percentage of Medicaid enrollees in the entire state. And if there are cuts to Medicaid, which is what's being discussed in Washington right now, that district will be affected. And so that's why you see these Democrats coming in. But what they wanted to do was rail against the Republicans. What the voters wanted to do was express their frustration with their own party right now. I think they see the Democratic Party as just kind of directionless. What are they doing? What I heard over and over again is, what is your plan? What are our marching orders? Voters want to have a sense that there's somebody at the wheel at the Democratic Party. And I think that these Democrats are going into these districts. I think it's smart to show that they're present and active, but they don't have good answers because the truth is they don't hold any levers of power, and therefore there's not a really satisfying thing to tell these voters.
Well, so speaking of the Democratic response, Governor Newsom is out with his latest podcast. It features Ezra Klein, who is a liberal columnist from the New York Times, whose new book, Abundance, documents how many liberal policies haven't worked in blue states like California.
Legally binding goal, 2.5 million units by 2030. And that is the established state policy. And that's the goal.
So you're not on track for that?
Not even close.
So there he is talking about housing and the fact, which is the biggest issue in the state, and the fact that he's nowhere close to building enough housing to deal with many issues, including homelessness. Melanie, how do you think this podcast is playing?
Overall, I think the podcast concept is a little questionable, but I have to say that this episode, I thought it was the best.
By far.
And I think that there were a couple of reasons, because I think that when he had folks like Charlie Kirk on or Steve Bannon on, it was almost like he was on this safari trying to understand like a species that he doesn't understand. And he was like, I think oddly sort of just kind of conciliatory in a way that wasn't very compelling to listen to, and I think very disappointing for liberal Democrats. This was a substantive conversation about true critiques that Ezra Klein and others have about liberal governance. And yes, the governor was defensive at times, but he also, I think really engaged on the substance of this. It wasn't the like sexiest conversation, but it was, if people are interested in actually what I think is one of the biggest conversations the Democratic Party actually has to have with itself, this was it. I actually thought it was quite good. Yeah,
I mean, the podcast is called This is Gavin Newsom, and I feel like this was the most podcast that was Gavin Newsom. This is the Gavin Newsom that we've known for many years behind the scenes, way more than we saw in the other ones, but apparently there isn't as much of an audience for nerdy policy talk.
This is the audience.
Which is why you don't see it going as viral or making as many headlines. But if you actually want to understand him better, that's the podcast to go to. But your thoughts on where the governor is?
Well, a lot of forces clashing here. One, read Abundance is really good.
Yeah,
and it's a powerful arguments Democrats need to hear about Democrats. Second, I want to get a Crocodile Dundee hat like that guy I just saw going by.
Michael Savage.
Oh, that was Savage. Okay,
yeah.
I couldn't quite see him on the monitor. So there's a big debate about this in Washington political geek circles. Most of them think it's the stupidest thing in the world. These are partisan Democrats. They go, he's giving that guy airtime. You ought to put handcuffs on him. Bring in, AOC to throw a net on him. That's the kind of, fight. What's he doing hanging out with them? Yeah. What a lot of the Newsom people will say is the biggest problem being Gavin Newsom thinking about running for president way out in California is nobody cares. You're too distant from the political central nervous system. What are we talking about? Gavin Newsom is getting clicks. He's now out there in the middle of the deal, which Newsom world has always been a little thirsty to do. Remember, they were putting up billboards and okay, I'm being nice. But we're putting up billboards. Take that, Alabama! National press. I'm here. I'm going to debate Ron DeSantis. So, if I were a Newsom for president person, I'd be worried about the thirstiness and the cynicism, gimmickry of it a little. But if their mission is to put him in the middle of the debate, and now they have done a little move over to the thoughtful Democratic thing, which I thought was very smart. They did a few freak shows, now move on. Maybe out in voter world, outside the Beltway, which is often wrong about everything, this thing will have some traction. But most of the Dem mandarins think it's stupid.
You wonder, in the post-Trump era, are we in a post-shame era?
I think we are.
You know what I mean? And so just getting attention and controlling the dialogue, whether you're shameless in doing it or thirsty, may not matter. Maybe that's one of the lessons that he's learned from all this.
Oh, I predict a Democratic presidential primary candidate will wind up in a cage of Joe Rogan before the New Hampshire primary, just for the clicks.
Yeah, that's not the craziest thing I've heard.
Next here on the issue is the governor's race. You have new reporting on this. The big question looming over that governor's race, what's the deal with Kamala Harris? Is she going to get in? Is she going to get out? There's new pressure on her. We'll get into that when we come back here on The Issue Is. We've already started talking about the governor's race. You have a favorite?
Well, I've said that Kamala Harris would be an amazing candidate and an amazing governor. I would support her if she chooses to run.
Katie Porter is running, who used to be one of your colleagues in the House. You're not endorsing her then?
Katie's a friend. She's a powerful force, an amazing communicator. What I've said is that Kamala Harris would be an amazing executive to the 5th largest economy.
That's Pete Aguilar of San Bernardino, chair of the House Democrats. Here are the current candidates running for governor for next year's race, remember. This field likely to get even more crowded. Back with our panel, political strategist Mike Murphy and Melanie Mason of Politico. Melanie, you're all over this governor's race. You just did an event, we have some video of it, at the University of California. This is with the former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraiogosa. Talking about his run for governor. And when you asked him about Kamala Harris, he looked right in the camera and had a direct message for her.
The governor's race is not going to be a coronation. The governor's race is not a stepping stone to another job. If you want to be governor, any of the candidates, then get in the race. The time is now. The challenges are too big. We deserve a real conversation. We had a 100-day campaign. So no, you can't get in at the end of the rainbow. Get in now. Let's have that conversation. I look forward to it respectfully.
Okay, that was quite clear.
Well, she's out now.
What were your big takeaways from talking with him for about an hour?
Yeah, I love the respectfully at the end of his comments because he was so ready for, obviously it's the obvious question, right? We're asking about what is going to happen with the former vice president and more importantly, what's going to happen to the rest of the field. I mean, the signals that we were seeing both publicly and behind the scenes was that everybody was sort of not everybody, most candidates were thinking about what their next move would be if she got in the race, the idea that she would clear the field. And so the fact that you saw the former mayor of Los Angeles look directly into the camera and say, I'm not getting out of this race, and I'm going to, and by the way, not only that, hurry up and get in this race so we can actually have this conversation. Now, there are two reasons for this. One, I think he's a little bored, and I think he wants to actually see this campaign get off and running, and I think that there is a robust conversation to be had with voters. The second is that this race is frozen right now. Donors are waiting to find out who is going to be in this race. They're not going to write big checks unless they know what the field looks like. And so I think that there's this state of limbo that not just the former mayor, but other candidates as well are getting pretty impatient.
Right, because you think about it, the whole reason that they get in this early is because they got to raise money, right? You got to raise, what, $100 million, something like that, to be able to run in this state, especially if you're running against somebody who has 100% name ID in Kamala Harris, but a lot of those donors don't want to give their money when they don't know what the field's going to look like. What do you think of Kamala Harris's calculus right now?
Well, I think she's trying to figure it out. I think she would be a weak front runner. I mean, there was an impact poll floating around, big Democratic polling firm. She has 99% name ID, but she only has a third of the voters for her. Do I think she's going to run or not? I have absolutely no idea. I do know that there are very few voters in this state, other than like relatives and campaign staff, that want the race to begin tomorrow. So she has more time than
Even we don't.
Yeah, no. She has more time than people think, because the money thing is going to wait on her. But it's not enough. I think former Secretary Becerra is taking a hard look at the race. Katie Porter's in, though she says, I'm in, but I'm not really in, but wait for Kamala, which is weird. And then you've got other candidates. So it's going to be a while. And if she does get in, I think she'll be formidable, but not overwhelming.
Okay, so you are advising Rick Caruso.
Longtime friend.
Yeah, longtime friend. Okay. Yeah. We know that he is considering whether to run for mayor or for governor. What's the deal? What's going on?
Well, I have an announcement. No, I won't do it. So here's the deal. Rick is focused on Steadfast LA,
which is to rebuild the
Palisades and Altadena.
But he's also thinking about.
Well, I'll tell you. No, we joke. There are two phones on the desk. One is people saying you got to run for governor. The state ought to lead America, and it could be so great.
Yeah.
And we got 9 different flavors of the same running right now. You know, the people, the architects of the current thing. If you love that, vote for them. And other people saying this city needs a mayor who doesn't have more frequent flyer points than any other mayor in America when the city's on fire.
Okay.
And so Rick is who he is. You know, a common sense, get it done kind of guy. Thinks stuff through. So he's hearing all of it. He's thinking about it. He's doing a very sound approach. I can tell you when I call him up and said, hey, I got to come see you. There's some county commissioner in Fresno. He's like, I'm a Steadfast for 5 days. I'll try to find. So there's no big news coming out of there, but there's certainly an opportunity. And I've been in politics a long time. I have never seen as much support from different areas that were not there last time you ran. I didn't work on that campaign, but I observed it closely, ringing that this is a time for a person like you.
So, at the end of the day, which do you think he does?
He's always wanted to anchor a public affairs.
He's taking my job. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. You get to be governor. We'll work something out.
All right.
We'll see. Stay tuned.
I take that.
There will be plenty of news at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's end this segment with sports. Melanie, you're a big Dodger fan like me. Mike, you're a big Detroit Tiger fan, right?
I am.
So this week, the Tigers were in town
Yes.
for opening day at Dodger Stadium, where they got to see the World Championship trophy for the Dodgers. So we had Ice Cube bringing it in a vehicle. You saw this, right? This was pretty cool. So we'll be back with more of The Issue Is. Mike, Melanie, thank you so much. And Ice Cube, take it away. This was a good day.
Was a good day.
Welcome song, The Streets of Bakersfield. This week, I walked the streets of Bakersfield. A big thank you to Blake Zanti, the Maddie Institute, for inviting me to speak to a smart crowd about California politics. While I was there, I also visited our affiliate, KBAK. Welcome to The Issue Is from Bakersfield. We're at KBAK, which is the home of The Issue Is on both Fox and CBS, here with Michael Patterson, their evening anchor, and Will Silverstein, the political anchor. And I love what you've done with the place with our logo, and I love the fact that you both are like giants. Yes. We can all stand next to each other. This is the 6'4" and up club. I'm curious, as we tour the state, what is the biggest issue in Bakersfield?
I mean, I think in Bakersfield and really Kern County in general, it's really just a changing economy and a changing landscape in terms of industry here. I mean, Bakersfield for the longest time has been so focused on oil and agriculture, and obviously at the state level, as we move away from kind of that traditional energy sources, it's how can this area adapt to that?
What do you think, Will?
Well, I have to agree with Michael, and with the biggest issue being, can the representation from Bakersfield make an impact in Sacramento and relate to those other parts of the state like Los Angeles and like the Bay Area? It's getting increasingly difficult when you have two different economies.
And what do you think the rest of the state can learn from the Central Valley?
I think from the Central Valley, the rest of the state can maybe learn a little bit more about affordability. There's a lot more affordable housing out this way. It's a booming place in the state. This is one of the few areas of the state where the population is actually growing significantly. So that's something that maybe some of those other areas along the coastline can take into account.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think for here recently, honestly, the people in this area work very hard. They're very much we're going to roll with the punches and get it done no matter what it takes. And so I think that's something the rest of the state can really pick up from.
Well, thank you guys for airing The Issue Is. Thank you for having us in your home. Thanks for doing a nice logo for us. We really appreciate it. Up next, our interview on TMZ Live this week turns contentious. What question did a congressman really not want to answer? Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas mocked Texas's Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who is confined to a wheelchair, as Crockett spoke to the Human Rights Campaign dinner in Southern California.
Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot mess.
Crockett says she wasn't referring to his wheelchair, but his policies. Some Republicans in Congress are now considering a censure for Crockett. I filled in on TMZ Live this week alongside Harvey Levin, and we spoke with Texas Republican Congressman Keith Self. Why is it important to censure Congresswoman Crockett?
Well, first of all, she is just a bully. And frankly, I'm not sure I support the censure because I frankly want AOC and Crockett to run for president in 2028. I take great umbrage to someone disrespecting our disabled folks, whether it be the governor of Texas or whether it be the man on the street who has a disability. That's not something we do in America today.
What about this? Oh, and now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said.
So that was Donald Trump talking about Sergei Kavaleski, who is a New York Times reporter who is disabled, and Donald Trump was clearly mocking him. What's the difference?
I am going to address what Crockett said as my colleague in Congress. We are addressing the censure movement, and I think that whether I vote for the censure or not, I'll go back to the fact that the Democrat Party now has AOC and Crockett as the two coming faces, the future faces of the Democrat Party. That's the point here.
But Donald Trump is the face of the Republican Party right now. So was it wrong when he did that, just like it's wrong when Jasmine Crockett did what she did?
Once more, I'm going to address Crockett and what she did against Greg Abbott. I'm not going to address any hypotheticals beyond that.
Not a hypothetical. It actually happened.
You can make your comparisons. I'm talking about Crockett. I was told we were going to come on this show to discuss Crockett. That's what I'm prepared to do.
Still hasn't answered that question. I'll be back co-hosting TMZ Live next week on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. And I'll be back here on The Issue Is. We're hosting an Issue Is debate next week. Gloria Allred on the left, radio host John Phillips on the right. That should be fun. Reminder, you can listen to extended versions of our interviews and this week's panel discussion in podcast form by searching for The Issue Is wherever you stream. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week for more of The Issue Is.